This is the first episode of Imagine the Possibilities. I'm Joseph, and with me is.
I'm Adam Mcleod, and as Joey said, it's good to have be here on the very first episode of Imagine the Possibilities. Now, this was kind of inspired by basically the thing all nerds do, which is, talk about your favorite video games and what they should be doing, or what type of new video games should exist but don't.
Exactly. What we'd like to see, or what would be unique to see, I think, are kind of along the lines of why we're doing this. So, we're starting off with a GTA open world kind of spin off, and you can take it away, Adam.
Oh yes, well, this came out with, of course, GTA 5 was just released, and as always with these big open world games, especially with Rockstar, they release this gigantic world that has a bunch of Easter eggs in it. And one of the most fun I have in those types of games is all the Easter egg hunting and various stuff you can find in the game that isn't part of the actual missions and storyline of it. So I got to thinking, as I'm sure a lot of other people have, what if they had a game that was fully about hunting for things like these Easter egg hunts for, I think in GTA 5 it's a little ghost on top of a mountain that you can find for a small amount of time during one part of the day. But there are several things inside GTA that point to that ghost being there. So why not have a game, similar to GTA with a gigantic open world, but instead of, going around and beating up hookers and selling crack, you go around trying to find these paranormal events.
Yep, and as you said, or we actually, for those of you who don't know, why would you know? Because it's not on the site. We actually did this whole podcast to a broken podcast program. So
So we actually spent like a good 45 minutes like coming up with these kind of amazing scenarios and possibilities that that kind of gameplay would be, and then I come over like, hey, how did the podcast go? I liked a lot of those ideas, and they were all gone. So we're going to use that as an excuse for not being as entertaining this time around. All
yeah,
the good stuff is gone. So
exactly. We'll mention some of it, but please bear with us. We actually spent 50 minutes somewhere else that you'll never see. So,
yeah.
paranormal investigation. Uh, I liked what we were talking about before, which was the storyline where this guy actually is with a group of like what were the names of the ones you said you watch them? I really don't.
I watch a lot of these all the times, and the one that's most known about, mostly because either you watched it because it's the original or because they made fun of it on South Park, was Ghost Hunters, and it's about basically the entire premise of that one is that these two guys are heating and plumbing experts. They do that all the time, so they're really used to the weird sounds that a house can make when it's settling or has something wrong with the ductwork. So they thought, well, they both had kind of paranormal experiences, and they thought like, well, we know uh, what is paranormal and what's not. So if we hear a sound and when we immediately know it's ductwork, we can just eliminate that. And the other show is Ghost Adventure. Now, if you've seen the parody that they did on South Park, Ghost Adventures is the mark they were aiming for, because that's way more on the ball for Ghost Adventures than Ghost Hunters. Not saying that there's some weird kind of stuff that Ghost Hunters does, but Ghost Adventures, it's like they go out to a place, they already believe it's haunted, and then the second anything happens, like it's not even just like, there's a bang, the knock of a building settling because it's cooling off during the nighttime, causes the wood and nails to expand or contract, and all of a sudden, just like a snap, they'll be like, "Oh my god, that was a ghost!" But not even just, "Oh my god, that was a ghost." It's, "Oh my god, that's the slain nun who had a baby here, and then sold it to Satan, and then killed herself, and now she comes over to haunt the place." They'll go off like way off on tangents of just like how far they go.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, quick, look over there. And then when they look over there, it just like I would wait for the guy to not look, and the guy just picks up a rock and throws it the other direction.
It it does almost that thing, and they would believe it. They'd believe that it was an actual ghost there, and like every bit of evidence they have is 100% proof positive that there's ghosts there, like stuff that's obviously lens flares off of things in the environment. They'll be like, oh, that's an orb. So I thought, for this game, it wouldn't be a traditional mission based as GTA is, but you would start out with a tutorial of, being with a bunch of these guys that are like the super believers, and everything that happens, they're like, oh my god, it's proof of the paranormal. But it would be teaching the player, number one, like how to control and how to search for things, but number two, teaching the player that sometimes things just aren't there or they're not paranormal. And then the challenge of the game is kind of discovering, first of all, the leads that lead you to these investigations, trying to find out if something's paranormal there, and then either in game putting all your weight behind saying like, oh, this is proof of something being paranormal or something not being paranormal.
Yeah, and then we had talked about the fact of the character, say you got really lucky and you found a whole bunch of string of real ghosts, then the character might become a believer, or if it finds a series of just hoaxes, it might become a debunker of these things.
Yeah, as a skeptic. I mean, I kind of think of classically of Houdini. Have you ever heard of what Houdini did with a lot of those people?
I do recall a little bit of it, but I never researched the whole thing.
Well, it basically goes like this. Houdini was both a skeptic and a believer. He was a believer till the day he died that there was an afterlife, and and you can actually kind of respect a guy like this, where he believed that it was true. There's an afterlife, and there are ghosts, and there are psychics, but he didn't believe that anyone he could meet was psychic. Like everyone he met, like he was a stage magician. He knew all the tricks.
Mm-hmm.
So he went through his entire life just knowing, like, looking for someone who really was a spiritual medium, that really was something there, and he believed, but every time he came across something, he just knew it wasn't true. It's kind of sad, but you could have that kind of situation as far as a storyline where, depending on how your character deals with things, depending how you in the game investigate what you find, like the game could track what you're doing, and then slowly, maybe you end up just as bad as the Ghost Adventure guys. Like, you don't ever find something, but you always act like it is. Like, you come forward with like evidence that's just your reflection off of a piece of metal or something.
Yeah.
Or you come across things like these, oh, everyone's gone over there, all these psychics have said that it's phenomenon, but you go in and you don't find anything. Or maybe you don't find anything because you weren't looking in the right place. Maybe those places were haunted, but you didn't go the right
mechanics.
thing. Like, or there's reports of aliens out there, and like there's something in the game that means aliens will show up if you send out a transmission the night before, but you forgot to do that, or you didn't know you had to do that, and no aliens show up. So you just kind of end up being this bitter skeptic. Or maybe you actually do. By luck, every lead you find leads you right to a ghost, a sea monster, or anything, and you basically become, Mr. Popular because you proved this paranormal existence out there.
Mm-hmm. And then also along that lines, we were talking about. I'm sorry, everybody, that we're talking in past tense, but as I said, we have already done this. So, but we were talking about the whole fact of the people you gain into your kind of inner circle that become researchers, like the librarian or the crazy guy who they thought was a wolf man, turned out he wasn't.
Yeah, like finding some guy, like, oh, there's a werewolf in the woods, and you just go out there, and it's just some regular guy, like a banker or something, does it online. He just has hypertrichosis, so he looks like the wolf man, but he's just some dude with a genetic disease. But I'll get to that in a second. But I wanted first to talk about just the fact that, because we were kind of alluding to that, was that not every lead you come across would lead to an Easter egg. Like, in Grand Theft Auto, like most of those things sprinkled in for the Easter egg, little breadcrumb trail they have, leads to something. In most cases, even if it's just like a little blurb, it leads to something. But in a game where it's based around this, you couldn't always have it lead always to something that's 100% going to happen.
Yeah.
So you'd be going around and you'd find, like, maybe in a newspaper thing, something saying that there's a disturbance at the old mine, and maybe it's just people telling stories. and that's part of the thing. You go there, and sometimes it'll be a ghost, or sometimes it'll just be people kind of letting their imaginations go off, or it was a slow news day, or even sometimes we were talking about having someone Scooby-Doo you. Maybe there is something happening in a place that's causing those reports, but it's not what you thought. It was something a little bit more mundane. Like we were talking about a crazy hobo with a knife at someone's house.
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
the crazy the hobo
Cracked
with a
out
knife.
hobo with a knife.
Yeah, we'll get to that a little bit later. But just a lot of the gameplay elements being based on finding these breadcrumb trails, investigating enough to see if it really seems like you should follow up on it, and then having to invest your time in game to investigate it. Because I thought that ghost in GTA 5 has a 1 minute window in game that it shows up.
Yeah.
So it's only there for a minute, and if you missed the time or you messed up like when you showed up, you're not going to really see it. So even if you do find like all the stuff and it's a credible thing, you might not be able to find it.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads us directly into your research buddies, because I think a part of this would be a really good draw to it would be to have a huge NPC cast of not just like you don't just have like these 5 or 6 homies that you hang around with. You have like dozens upon dozens of these characters that you go out and you kind of you have passing relationships with them from day-to-day stuff, and then slowly you can build up trust one way or the other so that they might do you favors. And we were talking about the librarian of you want to do research into these clues, like you found clues about the old church. There's a ghost of a nun that was there that died. Well, you go to the library to look up some microfiche to see if you can't find evidence of that person doing it, and while you're there you can talk to the librarian. And if you do that enough for enough different cases, eventually, like, you and the librarian become somewhat friends, and you ask them to help you out with something, and then you meet up afterwards. And if you slowly just work up with that, you can get them to help you with the research directly. Like, you can send them out to do research and come back and tell you their opinion on it.
Yeah, and then we were talking about the military guy who you could befriend, and that guy will help you maybe onto the base if there was a ghost, hoax or real situation on the base. Then he could help either sneak you in, or he could go research it himself and come back to you.
Yeah, and that's one of the good things about that would be if you really did a fully open world game, but also had like restricted areas. I mean, they have that in most open world games like GTA and Saints Row. They have parts where like you go in there, they're immediately going to start attacking you. But I mean, it's not a GTA game. You're not beating up an old lady to take her walker and use that to get into the base and then kill 5 or 6 guards. You're going in like trying to legally get in there. So you find someone who's on the military base and maybe they have an interest in the paranormal, and you contact them, and then you talk to him a little bit back and forth, and eventually he trusts you enough that he'll either try to sneak you onto the base or just go get you clearance to do it, or do it himself, depending on how good of a friend you are.
Exactly.
And then you can do that for, not just the military base, but imagine like water and power, like somebody who's like, there's a ghost, or there's even the classic alligator in the sewers. Like have him like go, like you become a friend with the water and power guy, and he'll find a way to let you get down there and investigate something.
Yeah, and also fame would also probably play into this, depending if your character has become, a paranormal adventurer, or, a paranormal ghost hunter, or just, no fame at all because everything he does is a hoax and he's very bitter and he hasn't really done a lot.
Yeah, and if you're doing that, you can actually have a full system based on like what a haunting is, who's going to be affected by it. Like, if you have a skeptic, there could be let's go the Ghostbusters route, and there's a grand old hotel that has a ghost problem, or they think they have a ghost problem, but they don't want there to be a ghost problem. They want there to be an explanation. So they're going to go out and find the skeptic that they know they can trust.
Yeah.
And then they'll call you up, or at least the management will call you up if that's the case, and they'll give you everything you want. But if you're known for going out and finding these ghost things, maybe the bellboy is the one to do it, because he's the one who has to walk up there all the time, and it's creepy as hell. So he'll ask you to go up there and prove that he's not crazy.
Mm-hmm.
and like it might differ in like what times you're allowed to get up there before someone comes and takes you down, or various other parts like getting onto the military base. Maybe you get permission from the brass, like you say, like I want a week so I can just be there for this time, and they'll okay it. But if you get on via just by suggestion of somebody else, like they'll give you just a day.
Yeah, exactly. And then also you've got, you know, your researchers or your friends that you're kind of acquire in the game might also have fears or skepticisms. So those also play in.
Yeah, like I mean, everyone's gonna. I wanted to put that in, or I was thinking about making a game like this. I'd say, there's plenty of things that people can go out and do, but there's just some stuff that people don't like or are actually afraid of. Like, I mean, just look at underwater levels on like any game. Like, I know a lot of people who just get to an underwater level, like, well, I was done with that game. So, I mean,
Exactly.
you could have like you can find like a marine biologist. They don't give a crap about underwater stuff, like, or they don't. They actually find it interesting, so they'll go and do it for you. And then obviously they would bring different like expertise too. So like you'd have to send maybe a camera crew specialist with a marine biologist to find the underwater stuff.
Hmm.
Or if you send people to stuff that either they know they're afraid of or don't know they're afraid of but are, like you send the marine biologist to go investigate for Bigfoot. They start hearing crazy things in the woods and they just start getting spooked, and then like that, it would affect your relationship rating. So the point where like they come up to you after like a really scary thing like happens on an investigation. They go, oh man, I love doing this stuff with you, but I can't do it anymore after what I saw out there. Kind of traumatized if you don't pay attention. Like sometimes
Exactly.
it might be like maybe it is like you send them on something where there's like an actual ghost there, and just by chance with whatever random numbers you have, they actually do in the program find the ghost, and it shakes them to the core. Like they just show up back and just say like, peace, I'm out. Like I'm not doing this anymore. I saw a ghost. I'm not dealing with this anymore. Scared me half to death. But or maybe you have something where they see disturbing disturbing events or things they can't explain that kind of shakes their faith in the world. And if you let that happen too many times, then they'll leave.
Yep.
So a lot of the game becomes not just about you going out personally and always doing anything. Because I imagine like a game like this, you'd have to put in like a couple thousand of these things like spread out across the maps with various clues and Easter eggs leading people around so they can investigate.
Yeah,
So there'd be,
exactly.
but I mean, then that's great for like giving people like the breadth they can go out and try anything and they'll find something. But as far as actually completing a game like that to 100% completion, like I know a lot of people are, you're not going to do it by yourself. Like
Exactly.
you're talking like like 1,000 or 2,000, especially if there's like fake leads and stuff in there. You're just not going to do it. But if you actually had a mechanic to grab on investigators and you can send them out to automatically do some of that stuff while you go and find more stuff, then you might be able to actually do it. Like if you kind of put some time into it.
Yeah, and then this kind of goes into the cracked out hobo hiding underneath the house, which is if you send the librarian, bad things could happen.
Yeah, like we were saying, like, not every paranormal thing or reports of a paranormal event is going to result in a an alien coming down or Atlantis being discovered or a ghost being there. Sometimes it might just be something else. Now it might be like, say, drug dealers are using this particular back alley to make a drug deal, and if you send someone there and then see it, they're going to be killed. Or you send like a librarian to investigate these strange noises coming from under this old abandoned house, and they show up, and those noises are coming from some effed up hobo with a knife. Like that person is going to actually die if you
Yeah.
don't send at least a few people to help them.
Yeah, like the military guy, which would be an example, who might
Well,
just
maybe
turn
even
around and take him out.
yeah, I mean, like maybe the military guy goes there and instead, like he just beats him up, or even if you send another librarian, I mean, they don't fight, but it reduces the chance of them dying because even if they are stabbed by the hobo with the knife, I mean, the hobo with the knife's probably going to run off, and then they their partner, quote unquote, kind of goes out and calls for an ambulance and tries to keep them there, and they don't die. But kind of like realize that some of this stuff is dangerous if you go alone. I mean, that could even happen to you. Like you go into a house, like you haven't gotten yourself a posse yet, so you go into a place to try and investigate yourself, and either, I mean, maybe not even you run across a hobo that attacks you with a knife, but you're in some place you're not supposed to be really, and then you know, some part of the door slams shut or like a part of the wall collapses and you're just sealed in.
Exactly.
You just die. Like having things like that, like if no one knows where you are, like just putting in some sort of challenges that can be, or just some curveballs can be thrown at the player. Because I mean, the big problem with a lot of games like that though is that as soon as someone sees someone come back as like dead, they're gonna restart the game and get from their last save point and just not send that person.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I was saying, I think it should be an auto-save thing where it's like you can't. Like, it's just...
Yeah. Well, I mean, auto saving has done that a lot, but even then, a lot of times with auto saving, like you can go back and I guess try the RNG again and again until it works.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's there's a lot of modern gamers out there that they're not used to seeing someone go, or not having a perfect event happen, like Mass Effect. You say something, oh, that ended up not being what I wanted, or somehow I ended up in bed with this thing.
Yeah, reload.
Just reload, do it again, no problem at all. But it comes a lot from games pedigree of just kind of binary, like, would thou like to save the princess? Yes, no, but you must.
Yeah, but you must.
Because there hasn't been a lot of games that have thought of kind of varying degrees of success or failure. Like, there's never been a game I can think of where, well, maybe the original XCOMs or XCOM in general, where you lose a valuable member, but you complete the mission, and that's almost never a justifiable loss for the completion of a mission or anything like that.
Yeah.
For most games, I mean, there's always going to be some exceptions, like I said, to XCOM, and then I'm sure there's some others that I've played that I'm not even thinking of right now. But love to see that where maybe even you rule on a haunting and find out later, like if you look online for a guide, that oh yeah, there actually is a haunting there, but you just have to do this, like not ruining your game if you do that.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of the multiple ways of ending could work on it. Because then it's not even about like what your character really does. Because if you're yourself, like even if your character is like not finding anything and kind of becoming a skeptic, if you keep on at it and eventually find something, your character's going to get the ending you want, where he proves that there's something out there.
Exactly. Which then I kind of goes into what we were talking about, which was getting perhaps a certain amount of alien ones unlocks the ability to make a alien encounter that you can email to a friend, and they can put it into their game, or vice versa, which I thought was really fun idea.
Yeah, well, you see this a lot in Infamous 2. If you ever played that, there's actually a lot of character-created content you can get with it, where they kind of give a player something that can kind of make levels with. And you could do that in a game like this, where like if you either get a certain ending or you do enough of a certain type of related content, like you go out there and let's say out of 200 water missions, you do like 175 of those water missions, and that's including red herrings and things that aren't red herrings. Eventually you have done enough missions that the game's going to be like, hey, congratulations, you can do your own investigation and then send that to your friends. And then in doing your own investigation involves like using some of the tools there to like put down breadcrumbs to lead people to an area or blah blah blah. And then you can send that out to your buddies. And now they load that up, and it's not going to tell them right off that like, oh, this is your investigation, but it'll probably give them the first breadcrumbs so someone can start following. And then you have your buddies going out, and they're going to go and do your content because like, hey, I just got a mail from my buddy, and he's sent me a newspaper clipping in the game. It's like you got a mail from a friend saying, hey, check this out. and then you can go investigate it. And the real bastardly thing would be to either make it so you can set really specific things, but also you can make the entire thing a hoax as well. Like your
Yeah,
own
exactly.
content is a hoax. So you send something, and your friend is looking around, like trying every possible thing, and then just nothing happens.
Hmm.
Like, oh no, it was there the entire time. Or if you're just a real bastard, like you make something that's like so obscure, but with some like kind of obvious thing pointing at what they should have done, that they'll be like, oh, there's nothing there, blah blah blah, and then you kind of show up on their game and show them what they were supposed to do, and be like, what?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it gives the a uniqueness because you got, supernatural, you've got aliens, and you got the paranormal and the ghost kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's various different things you can do, but I mean, as far as hoaxes go, there's a number of things you can do. I mean, the classic aliens and ghosts are like the two biggest ones. Um, you can do other things though, like conspiracies, maybe even like political intrigue, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. We were talking about what was it? The character is essentially kind of like question mark from DC.
It's the question from DC, or
DC.
where you're sitting there and like he's basically the question. You go around trying to find like these connecting things between various bits and pieces, and it could be like I said, it could be basically paranormal stuff as far as ghosts and goblins, and or maybe things in the forest. Looking for Bigfoot and things like that, and having to find things and the way they meet. I would love to see like kind of mission planning where you just have your breadcrumbs like just being like snippets from a newspaper or a part of a journal or a note someone's written for you or a picture, and you just kind of on a wall like putting them all together with like tacks and yarn so you can kind of see and visualize what's going on and what it could possibly mean.
Yeah. The other one that would be kind of entertaining is like you get a news clipping and you go out and follow this thing, and oh, it's some kind of mythical monster or beast. It could be a unicorn or whatever. And this character goes out to find it, and it turns out that it's actually another crew, like another, like your ghost hunters or whatever, and they're essentially videotaping you looking stupid going out and doing this.
Yeah, you could do that. Like have a little bit of rivalry depending on like what you do. Like especially if you get a little bit more famous than them, or possibly are like a skeptic, they might try to fool in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, or you debunk one of their ones, like if you have that
Hmm.
paranormal adventurers and you go to that same house and you're like, no, that wasn't this at all. It was crazy old man Smithers, and he was trying to get everybody out of the building so he could sell it.
Yeah, I mean that could be like an easy mode basically for finding your leads is just go go onto the TV and you see like a little snippet from their show that gives you all the information about like what they're investigating and where, and you can go there and investigate it and see if it's true or not.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a number of things you can do as far as interactions, and that's one of the reasons. That's the reason why we are talking about this on Imagine the Possibilities. Like this isn't that difficult as far as I can see from a programming standpoint. Like so, and I think with when you see all the people going out there and searching for this stuff, there's definitely a market for it. I'm not, and especially considering that you would have to make this thing, you wouldn't need to have like excessive amount of cutscenes and stuff where people are just kind of blazing through content just by like watching a cutscene. Your content in the game would be entirely based on sitting down, doing research, reading through stuff, or trying to wait for certain times to show up and killing time until then. I mean, like really doing a stakeout kind of thing where you have someone have to sit there. There's supposed to be, the headless horseman comes across this bridge at a certain time at night, but no one knows the time. So, you sit there and you wait for it the entire night. But that's a lot of time spent on like one little quest. I have to imagine that would get like a lot more gameplay than a lot of the current games where it's just like, we're going to spend 70 hours, modeling and putting all this stuff, details in the background and stuff that you can't actually get to, and the player's just going to walk by it.
Yeah. And plus, the thing is you do have a group, so even while you're doing that, your character may have a phone that can be brought up that will have the time up in the corner, and you can still hear sound from the street. So
Hmm.
and you can send people to send text to people that's like, oh, go to this place, check here for this, and vice versa. So your character, even though he's waiting on the bridge for this headless horseman, your minions or your
Yeah,
researchers.
you could take that time a lot to working with a small UI to order stuff around, just so you don't have downtime. I see a lot of games where it's just like, oh, you just pause and there's the menu. Like, well, maybe if you were to kind of expand on what the menu does in world, it wouldn't be just something you could pull up with the pause. Maybe it is like something you have to be doing on a stakeout. Like, you can pay attention to the environment around while you're making changes to what your crew's doing on the cell phone.
Exactly. So this
Yeah.
way, your character's still able to hear, like you're still able to hear, and and you're
Yeah.
doing all these functions. So that's the thing is like, you don't have to pause to do all this other stuff because you can do it. And if your character hears something, then it's up to you to do what a normal
Yeah.
person would do and put the phone away and start investigating.
Yeah, and especially when you get to the point where you're using multiple investigators, you're trying to get completionist, and it could be a kind of a cheap way of skipping finding other stuff, just if you just have the paranormal stuff happen on the map naturally, just based on whatever events happen, you can have plenty of events that they only happen at a certain amount of time. Like, I mean, you have an exact time it happens, but in game it only depends on how much you research into it. The horseman shows up at 3:33 in the morning every day. That's what the time he just shows up, and he just goes by. And if you do a little bit of research, you'll find out like what bridge it's at, but doesn't have no idea what time. Or if you do a little bit more, you find out the bridge that it's at, and it happens at night, so you can be there at night. If you do a little bit more research, it's there at the bridge, and it's at 3 something in the morning.
Yeah,
So you just
exactly.
narrow it down to the point where you can actually go like, oh yeah, it was this time, blah blah blah.
Hmm. And it's one of those things that at the same time, they might be like, oh, this book, or like, this book was never returned, but the person who last had it is such and such, and this is the address. And then you can go, trounce to this house, and oh, the guy, up and died, and they sold his book collection, but this is the buyer. So you can have little things like that where even the research is kind of going around and doing, little,
Little thing. I mean,
little things.
I would want to get rid of the mission kind of programming, because I mean that's a lot of what games like that are, where it's like, oh, do X to get to Y, and that's great. I mean, that's great to have because that helps focus people on doing stuff. But there's a big problem with over reliance on that, where I mean a lot of times you just you know do what I'm told, go to the next point, do what I told, like. And just keep having a little bit of a hand holding, a little bit of a breadcrumb trail, where you
True.
can you were just saying. I mean, that exact same situation, if it's just told to you in these little cutscenes where it's just like, oh well, this person was renting out this book, go here and get this.
But the
Oh,
thing
excuse
about it
me.
is, or the nice thing about this, is you can always do, like, you can send your minion, and they can call you back on your little cell phone thing and be like, oh, this happened, should I continue going for it? And you can say yes or no, because it's one of those things, like, you don't need every piece of it. If you know the
Yeah,
bridge, you're not, and oh, it's at night, well, then you don't really need the time, so you don't have to go after that. But, something, you might find out, oh, well, that guy died in his like mysteriously died. Oh, so there might
yeah,
be
maybe it
something
leads to
there.
something else. Yeah,
Exactly. So it's
but
like it
and
may
also
lead there.
I was talking earlier about the very different people you can get, the librarian or the military guy, but I'm also imagine. I mean, I imagine like a really big part would be having to prove that you see this stuff,
Hmm.
as far as
So you
progressing
need
the
a
plot.
photographer,
So
or
you
it
need
could
a
be
photographer, stuff like that. But I mean, there's lots of different photography equipment, and a lot of games they like to say like, oh, you have a camera, congratulations, go with that. But maybe you don't just have a camera. Maybe you have a number of cameras available to you, depending on like what you
yeah,
do
like the
to go and
motion
get them out.
sensors. Like you can do the
Or I mean,
motion where you set it
if
up.
you're really desperate, you can just set up a camera with enough tape, just tape for an entire night,
Hmm.
and then you can just basically fast forward it throughout the entire thing, and then based on where you put up the camera, like you might just get a perfect shot of something going by based on
Exactly.
the time.
Hmm.
Or you go off and you find out like, well, I need to research this more. Oh, the guy has the book, and going over to his house and finding out blah blah blah.
Or the thing could be he's alive and he's a paranormal
Yeah, I
buff,
mean, and it's
and
not.
he
Yeah, it's
might.
like not always that he's dead or anything like that.
Yeah.
But there's like like I mean, you might just go over there. The guy has the book and gives it to you, or there might be other things.
Well, and the thing could be is like he's a paranormal buff, and it's like you could go back there later and maybe get him to back you with a little bit of money so you can buy motion detecting equipment or whatever, or take on a case for him that maybe he has been, researching in a way.
Yeah, but yeah, that comes down to just kind of the relationship, or having a bunch of NPCs with little relationships rather than just 7 or 8 that have like these fully unbelievably voice acted like cutscenes and stuff that they do.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead, you just have a number of people who like you talk to, you go out, you're friends with, and then eventually the point of this being that number one, like you're gonna have people you kind of fall in love with because maybe they don't have like these long drawn out like sequences that they do stuff, but they do have a personality like kind of built into them. So like you come across a librarian who's just kind of got like they have a tick. Like imagine that, like they just have some sort of tick where they kind of jerk their arm around, almost like it's like a a glitch in the game.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of supposed to be happening.
Hmm.
And talking with them about that and stuff, and getting to know them a little bit, or
Yeah.
different personality ticks. I mean, just but you're going to have a situation where you have these characters that and you are out someplace, and I can just see it right now. The conversation of like, I was out and like I'd been playing the game for like 2 weeks, and I'd found like maybe 2 things total that were like somewhat paranormal, but I couldn't really tell, and blah blah blah. And I was out there at this place. I was at the wharf with these two buddies of mine, and we were kind of going by, and to make sure that we were going to at least find something if it showed up, I sent them off. Like, yeah, just give people a legitimate reason in game to separate themselves
Hmm.
by choice, not that kind of BS. Oh well, let's separate up, and then like just no choice at all in it. If you want to just be there with 2 other people because it makes you feel better, yeah, you do that. Like you just hang around them.
Yeah.
But you also have like that just means that there's only one possible place where if something happens you can see it on like a wharf. Like, so I send them down at the end of the pier so they can see from that angle, and I can be over here, and we can see each other the entire time, and we have one person off to the side, blah blah blah. And I was there for like 2 hour games. I was like waiting, I was checking to make sure nothing else was going on. All my people were doing what they needed to do, and just when I'm like starting to kind of think nothing's going to happen, all of a sudden the fog rolls in, and I get the maiden of the wharf like drifting by, and I got like 5 good pictures, and it's the first time I was able to prove something in game that existed.
Exactly.
And also, like, imagine just an entire game where you're chasing down hoaxes, because I imagine like at least like 3-to-1 hoaxes to actual things, where you investigate and nothing's there, and then that puts in the probability of something not being there. So you can't always expect something to be there, because we were talking about this was a big gripe the last one we did of jump scares being too easy.
Oh, right, yep. Yeah, we did that.
Because yeah, there's too many games out there. There are quote unquote horror games that involve nothing more than playing a really loud scare and flashing it in front of you.
Hmm.
Because that's just unexpected. I mean, like I went off on a tirade. I'll do a little tirade now just to entertain the people, because there's nothing more interesting when you're playing something in the background to listen to than a nerd just kind of going off on something. But in a jump scare, it's always something looking at you and a loud scream. And in movies, they do a lot where they just kind of cut out the audio and stop action from happening for a few seconds and then do it. Because, primally, like the way our brains function is if there's a sudden lack of information coming in, the senses really start paying attention to what's going on, because you don't know what's happening in your surroundings. You're not aware of what's going on right now. So your brain's saying, I have to learn more about what's going on. So you become very tense. And then the two things that are that are going to just set you off are a loud sound, which alerts you to possible danger, and in particularly something staring at you. The realization that something is aware of your presence is unbelievably jarring. I mean, if you ever watch a movie where they like make straight eye contact at you, like really straight at the camera at the person, like it is kind of unnerving in a lot of those situations. So they just show something looking at the screen, screaming, and after a pause, like you just you jump, you're startled. It's basically taking a free scare, like out of someone who's just startled easily.
Hmm.
It's ridiculous on the face of it. The but if you're talking about true horror is anticipation of something like that happening, and in a game like this where you would actually be going out and doing some kind of paranormal investigations, you would be going to a place and you don't know if something's haunted or not. You don't know for sure. So you don't know if all that time you're spending there is just going to be for nothing at all. You're sitting there at a place and nothing's going to happen at all. And you've had that happen where several times it doesn't happen, but then there's that one time where something happens. And maybe even have like programmed into the game bumps and stuff that buildings make, or sounds of cracking as the building cools and it settles.
Yeah,
Like,
standard
yeah,
actual
standard stuff that
building.
happens. Like you kind of get used to that, and then maybe one time you hear something that's maybe is just the building settling, but it doesn't sound like all the other ones you've ever heard. Or there's a sound in the building that's just like really unnerving, and then slowly coming to the realization that maybe it isn't just a fake one this time, and maybe you are going to like walk around the corner and see the ghost of the little girl with her head in her hands or something like that. Just something you really weren't expecting to see, because you have established for the player these rules of what's going to happen, how things are going to go most of the time, and then every once in a while you throw them a curveball. I think that's a way better way of doing real horror experience for a lot of players,
Yeah,
but also
exactly.
kind of giving them control of the horror. Like if you're sitting there with like 3 or 4 people, you're not going to feel quite as vulnerable, and the various different ways that it can affect you. I mean, it's not going to have just the ghost just waiting to jump out at the screen and like scare you. It's going to be coming across something, and you're looking down a hallway, and all of a sudden something runs by.
Yeah, exactly.
And the game's like really trying to be realistic as possible, and even have that situation where like something runs by, like oh crap, is there someone actually here? Is this like is this one of the Scooby Doo gang, or did I just walk into like some kind of secret drug ring? Like, is my character actually going to die because of not ghosts or anything, but because of real things? And then go around the corner and there's nothing there. Like, oh crap, that was a ghost.
Yeah, or a door close, like a door, you just hear that, close kind of
Yeah.
thing, where it's like, oh, was that somebody actually coming into this place, or was it a ghost?
Was
What
it the wind?
was it? The wind? Yeah, is there a broken? Like, you open the door and you find out, oh, someone smashed the window, and it's just the wind blowing a open door closed, or
Yeah.
was it?
Or yeah, or was it? You can have so many of those things, and especially if you're doing an entire game based around kind of debunking and bunking paranormal stuff, you can have stuff where you actually do have like airflow through a building, like what it would do technically, and you have to pay attention to that stuff, because if you hear the door, slam, you go in there and okay, there's a broken window there, and then you have to kind of pay attention, or have something where the character says like, "Oh, well, the airflow's not coming through here, so it wouldn't have been the wind because blah 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 air currents or whatever."
Hmm. All
But
right, so 3 minutes, we got to wrap. So
okay, so I mean, I'm sure it's going to be nothing but like pretty much bored people on the internet looking for something to listen to while they do something, listening to this. But if by chance some of these ideas get to a game developer, if someone's actually going to sit down and think of like, hey, that sounds like kind of an interesting thing to do. Once we have like a map or something, we can just sparkle in these little Easter egg hunts. You could do this, but not only could you do this, you could put in like really effective DLC Yeah, because I mean DLC is the devil, but it is the thing that makes a developer basically salivate at making a game. You could just have a DLC entirely based towards one type of paranormal event. Okay, cool. Like we're gonna have the DLC for the UFOs, and we're gonna put in like 3,000 different UFO things. 1,500 are gonna be fake, 500 are gonna be false. People thinking that it is when it's not. And then there's gonna be another 1,000 of just just
Military.
like there's actually no UFOs in the UFO one. No, and
Yeah.
I'm using 1,000 as like a general like just number to throw out there. I have no idea how much it would actually cost to do it or how much effort would be involved, but it seems like it'd be fairly easy once you have a world set up and once you have a map done. You could easily do that.
Yep.
You just put pepper in like, okay, we're gonna do we have this map, or hell, you can have the map release with the basic, like a really basic fundamental way of doing things, and then release map or basically Easter egg packs of all these different things. Like
Yep.
you have like the really basic game that has like an okay number of like peppered around the map enough to give you some real good gameplay, and then you have the UFO pack and there's like a bunch of alien content. And then you could have also the deep sea pack where it just has like a bunch of underwater content, and then maybe there's the ghost one, the paranormal hauntings, and there's a bunch of paranormal haunting ones. And that way, I mean, you could have your map out and then just continue to monetize it over and over again, and you're not dealing with having to get this amazing amount of voice acting and stuff. So you could actually do just re-release. You could do you can do an entire one based on vampires and werewolves, and then like a year later, if you're not actually releasing like a sequel or anything, you can actually just do okay. Well, let's do it again. Vampires and Werewolves Mark Two.
Yeah. And at the same time, you can actually expand the city. You know.
Expand the city. I mean, I imagine that expanding the city and stuff would be like full separate games.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or I mean, or you could just do it where you have the base game, you have a few expansions, and then have okay, well we're going to put an expansion in. Like maybe their base game doesn't have a military base or some of the off limits areas. Maybe that's an expansion where it's just like you have the basic city, and then the expansion is restricted area, and then there's a military base, and they add in like the water and power, like the sewer tunnels, and you have like businesses that are added in that actually have like places they don't want people to be in, industrial places, or construction yards where you're not allowed to go, but you need to go and get like clearance for it.
Exactly.
You just slowly kind of build out the city or the map, or maybe there's just an entire you just have a road trip mod where expansion where you basically go to a outskirt of the city and find a bunch of, I don't know, Sasquatch meeting up in secret with aliens or something like
Oh,
that.
that darn Sasquatch alien conspiracy. All
It's
right.
probably what you think.
Okay. Well, we should wrap up because we're about to hit 50 minutes. So.
Okay. So basically, this is the theme of the episode. I'm sure everyone's already understands what the episode's kind of like because, I mean, if every other podcast in history is a hint,
Indicator.
they found out later by listening to something that someone linked them to, like a later, way funnier, way better, and more intelligent episode. And they thought, oh, this sounds cool. I'll throw the other episodes on in the background and pay attention what they're doing. And then they're hearing this one now after a couple of other ones. So to all those people, like, we weren't as smart or as funny as we are then as we are now. So we apologize, and we'll eventually get as good as you've heard us.
Unless we just in the future are still two idiots just talking about paranormal activities.
We're always going to be idiots, but I mean, there's nothing more fun to listen to on the internet than an idiot.
Exactly.
It's the idiot talking about something he has no idea about. We're gonna talk to some developer one day, and they're gonna say that's like the stupidest idea I ever heard. You have any idea how long it would take to program that?
Exactly.
Okay, but that's an idea. So if developers, if you are paying attention and it isn't insane, basically a GTA with paranormal, the Easter egg hunt is the game.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that is the end of Imagine the Possibilities episode 1. If you're just streaming these. We'll see you in episode 2.